If you don't know this car, then you ain't been paying attention. I'm just playing. You probably never seen it before, and that's fine. That's fine. Silhouetted.
If not, we can just format it for them, and then we can go to reproductions or something.
Here at tech rehearsals. Tech rehearsals.
Tech.
Damn, look at this mean old projector.
That's crazy.
That's a mean old projector.
Imagine having that shit.
Oh my god.
That's ridiculous.
God dang. Woo! There's 3 of them. 2 and 3 with 1 right behind me. Trying to get the layout for the last piece.
You want to tell me a what?
It's a group piece and we have to be in a circle. Oh, practice.
Yeah, me.
These 2 are practicing their piece together.
Like after you film me, y'all film me back there.
Practicing their
Oh,
piece.
ready?
Oh. That was beautiful. That was great. That was amazing. Thank you for that.
How to do that?
Thank you for
How
that.
does it go? It goes.
You gonna do it for real?
I'm gonna follow you first.
You gonna do it for real?
Do it once and then I'll do it.
You gonna do it for real?
Isn't it just like,
It starts like that, no?
yeah, like a step?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
We don't know nothing.
Ha! Like that with your leg up.
Yeah. Point it out. You gotta point it
Ah!
out.
There it is.
There you go. That was beautiful.
There it is.
That was beautiful. Thank you guys.
Cultural cohesion.
Thank you for that. Cultured. We're cultured here.
So dry, so dirty, so incapable of sprouting out anything beautiful. The crows had told her. Because the crows had arrived only to take what they could see. And the garden looked a lot like hope and progress and everything Anita deserved. But the crows had built up fences around their barren minds and refused to see how others were doing on the other side. But if only they had looked on the other side and seen that, look, the children, the garden has given birth to children whose laughter sounds like a melody, one that they sing in a language only they understand, and their tears look like streams watering the lonely Palo Verde. The tree that falls but does not make a sound because its roots are not as solid as its need for survival. And the tree reminds them of never known.
Whose story do we tell in the naming of streets, avenues, and buildings?
There is always more than one meaning, always more than one side to the story.
Are we like Carrillo, names from across the Pacific, names that are not indigenous to this continent but are sewed into the history of this land?
Take this city, Tucson, also known as its Spanish name. Its Spanish name because before that, this land was known as Tucson, also known as its Autumn name. Autumn as in here before the Spanish came. Lest we forget that all names have meaning, an identification term, a definition. And maybe
it's not that serious.
But we often keep names alive for a purpose, like a family lineage, or to remember someone or something.
Often it is the colonizer. Often it is the men. Often it is not the most deserving.
So
What's in Ari's name? Texas Ranger.
First mayor of Tucson.
Confederate sympathizer.
Apache murderer.
It is never the people who embody this history that get to make the calls. Often, it is the people who ignore history and altogether mouth a name empty of context.
That's why it's named after him in the first place, right? Because he and his mother known.
Whose story do we tell in the naming of streets, avenues, and buildings?
There is always more than one meaning, always more than one side to the story.
Are we like Carrillo, names from across the Pacific, names that are not indigenous to this continent but are sewed into the history of this land?
Take this city, Tucson, also known as its Spanish name. Its Spanish name because before that, this land was known as Tucson, also known as its Autumn name. Autumn as in here before the Spanish came. Lest we forget that all names have meaning, an identification term, a definition. And maybe it's not that serious. But we often keep names alive for a purpose, like a family lineage. lineage or to remember someone or something.
Often it is the colonizer. Often it is the men. Often it is not the most deserving.
So what's
in
Ari's
Ari's name? Texas Ranger.
First mayor of Tucson,
Confederate sympathizer.
Apache, murderer.
It is never the people who embody this history that get to make the calls. Often, it is the people who ignore history and altogether mouth a name empty of context.
That's why it's named after him in the first place, right? Because he and his mother.
The sound of your breath as it leaves you and carries into a space that has existed long before you were ever dreamed into life. Listen to the sound of rabbits scuttling into dark holes to escape the sound of scales sliding across the sand. Listen to your heartbeat and beat and beat. There was music before we played it. There were stories before we heard them. There was love before we felt it. There was a home before you built it. Barrio Anita breathes. The sounds have changed from silence to traffic on I-10, from wind and trees to sneakers on the court, from languages we haven't heard to the laughter of loved ones. But just because the music isn't classical doesn't mean it's not music. Just because the stories have changed does not mean the old have.
What is this place but a fertile space that can be impregnated with any action, the very ritual, the execution of a plan planted in the land of time? With constant attention, strengthened by the committed hand, the intention is grounded. Making raíces with mantra-like deeds, it grows and breathes. Like an empty classroom at the first and last bell ring, becoming a new seeds of inspirational memes, the very building blocks of genetic genes, blueprints for neural leaves que comen de la luz de mi sol, enlightened. So I ask again, what is this place? Where actions are seeds that grow consequential roots, burrowing deeper and deeper, absorbing the nutritional wisdom of a Davis lecture, creciendo un cerebro de raíces con un hambre incomparable por lo nuevo y lo práctico, made habitual, repeatable, the tilling of the flesh to be made more hospitable, como las huellas de un músico jugando la canción del viento y un árbol. Every leaf a new string strung, every plant a new lung plugged, every kid a new song sung. So I ask again, what is this place? But the pristine example of community, donde un ser comparta con otro, be it knowledge or sustenance. With no prejudice or hesitance, the branch is always extended. So what is this place? A body, a community, or un jardín? Thank you.
Let's go, mijo!
Let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story.
The desert is alive. A desert born of 1,000 creation stories. Coarse fur of the coyote, sharp eyes of the hawk, and the hands of its children. Let me tell you a story.
The Pueblo taught you that you are never alone.
These kids are holding me as I thank them for leaving me space, as I thank them in gravity and you. These trees have held us together.
Let me.
A lot of my initial help for myself is a very close friend that still have, and she was like 2 o'clock in the morning. If I felt like absolute crap, I could call her. She had no comes about it.
Inc., produced by DJ Young One, by a local artist called Ask Baby. Brand new off the stove. So without further ado, we have a guest in the studio, and he goes by, his name is Gregorio, and he is the host of Sal's Talking Podcast. This is much more,
Mine's intense.
authentic.
But mine isn't.
Much more legit than the camera.
Nah, it's like okay. This one isn't live though, so like, hi guys. Hi guys.
Hey.
Hi.
Chilling with